Hey, okay, we are back. You are looking at my Zoom whiteboard because what I want to do next is give you a picture of what we're talking about when it comes to whatever you want to call it, health, whole being, well-being, wholeness, and really integration. And so the first video of when I started to elaborate on how I go about working either individually or with couples therapy is this idea of integration, and we talked about the FACES, FACES, way of assessing integration. And so I want to give you a more clear picture of that. And this is how we're going to do that versus me messing around with my literal whiteboard that you may or may not see so well when I'm doing the video. So you're going to get to see some epic Brian Jones drawing here. And when I say epic, I mean epically not too good. So don't expect a Rembrandt because this is certainly going to be not that. I'm going to describe all this for you in a minute. I don't know what just happened there. Let's fix that. By the way, this is something I typically do with my patients, and I'm moving this to a video because, really in all, as you might notice with these three videos, you're talking about, probably a session, easily one session, if not two sessions. So not only am I saving precious time in sessions, although I think this is a great tool to use in session, I'm also saving you a lot of money. So hey, it's a twofer. So you get the benefit without the financial investment. And so what you've got here is our river of integration. Heyo, you've got the two shores. You got a shore here, a shore. I'm not sure if that's going to show up on the video. A shore here. Oh, didn't even know I did that. See, and a shore here, and then you've got our river, obviously there. Um, and so, as you can see, this river, right? It's calm. It's serene. It's relatively easy to navigate. And you kind of go with the flow of life. You ride the wave of life, so to speak. In other words, your nervous system is able to tolerate the flow of life where the current takes you. It's able to tolerate the stresses of life, right? Things don't push you outside of your comfort zone. They don't push you outside of your window of tolerance. And again, if you're not familiar with that term, we're going to get to that once you start up with me. Um, and let's see, what color are we going to use here? No, let me get rid of those things real quick. Okay, because I don't want this to be confusing for you. I want this to be helpful for you. So you may remember the old nursery song, row, row, row your boat gently down the stream. Merrily, 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 life is but a dream. Row, row, row your boat gently down the stream. Life is but a dream. Now, I don't know about you. My life has not been so merry and it's not been so dreamy. And I have not just gone gently down the stream, right? So this is not quite what life is like, is it? Rivers typically have rocks in them, right? So this river will also have some rocks in it. Um, and notice that these rocks are sharp, right? Um, and so, rocks start off sharp in rivers, but over time, right, they start to get smoothed out, right? The river, the water smooths out the rocks, right? So notice these rocks didn't disappear, but they're not causing problems either, right? So notice you can have challenges, you can have difficulty in life, you can have hurtful experiences, bad things can happen to you, right? But you're able to move forward with a sense of vitality, wholeness and thrive, ultimately. And so these rocks represent what we're going to call resolved hurtful experiences, resolved hurtful experiences. And it's important to say there are two main ways these rocks go from sharp to smooth, smooth over. So again, from unresolved hurtful experiences to resolved hurtful experiences. And it's important for you to understand this, particularly in our work together. So I'm going to tell you about it now. The first is what we call rupture to repair. Rupture to repair. So in this scenario, these rocks can be things in life that were hurtful at one time when they happened, but there was a repair, right? What we call a repair. So, for example, maybe a caregiver did something that hurt us or let us down, but then they came back and they made a repair, meaning they apologized, they took responsibility for what they did, they took the time also to understand your experience and how you felt about what they did. And then as a result, you felt better. The relationship was restored. So from an attachment perspective, which is one of the ways I work, I think you might know that by now. From an attachment perspective, this is one way to develop what's called secure attachment as a child, or now as an adult to move towards what's called earned security. So just pause for a moment, as you know I'm fond of doing, and just notice how this feels so far as you're hearing this. Okay, let's resume. The other way to move from unresolved to resolved hurtful experiences is you develop what's called a coherent narrative. A coherent narrative. For example, you moved, let's pretend you moved away and it was really sad to leave your friends, behind, but then you made new friends and you felt better. And your caregivers, they helped you feel the sadness of leaving your friends from one home behind while comforting and at the same time helped you to see that you've been able to make new friends that you really like. So thus you would have this coherent narrative that while it hurt to leave some friends, you're able to make new friends too, right? So a coherent narrative means that you're able to acknowledge the reality of what happened without denying its importance to you, dismissing or minimizing it, or even pretending everything is okay, right? But also not getting lost in the hurt of what happened so that it became overwhelming or it takes over the present moment, right? So simply put, a coherent narrative means you're able to make sense of the things that happen in your life. And as a result, they no longer feel hurtful. You don't feel stuck anymore. The past no longer haunts you. So a popular way, and this may be familiar for you real fast, a popular way people talk about this is you don't have any more baggage. Okay. So both of these experiences are absolutely necessary for mental health, right? In terms of moving from rupture to repair and developing a coherent narrative. But because neither us nor life is perfect, we can get stuck in unresolved hurtful experiences, whether because of the consequences of our own choices or the choices of others. So, to stick with our analogy, we're going to call these unresolved hurtful experiences boulders. Oh, and I totally forgot something. My epic drawing here. This is a river, and a river's not really complete without something. By the way, this drawing you're about to see is the best you're getting from me. All right. Do. Okay. So this is our boat. I told you I'm not a great drawer. This is as good as it gets. So that's a boat. That's a sail, by the way, if you're not so sure. Yeah, it is what it is. Just go with it. So talking about boulders, let's get back. Let's stay focused. Okay. So again, stick with our analogy. We're gonna call these unresolved hurtful experiences boulders, right? So these boulders, um, let's see, let's draw some boulders. So these boulders, what are they doing? They are redirecting, right? They are redirecting the flow of the river towards either shore or both shores. I'm going to get to that in a minute. But these boulders, just so you know, from a representation standpoint, a symbolic standpoint, they could be something like a friend moving away, getting bullied. They could be a long-term sickness. They can be the loss, the loss. They can be a loss of a person, hope. They can be the loss of an opportunity. Um, they can represent trauma, whether developmental trauma, which happens in childhood, that's why it's called developmental, or more like a one-time incident, like a car accident, right? And this is stuff that it feels perhaps overwhelming. It feels too fast, too soon, something you didn't see coming, something you didn't have enough time to respond to. Right. So that's kind of a way of defining trauma. Um, it can all, these boulders can also represent not feeling understood growing up, isolation or loneliness. They can be inconsistent or unreliable caregivers. They can represent caregivers who minimized or dismissed or ignored your emotions and relational needs, and so on. We can keep going, but just to give you an example of what the boulders can represent. And not to go off on a tangent, but because I use this now popularized word trauma, I think it's important to define a little bit more specifically what I mean by that. So when something is traumatic, it's traumatic because something happened to you that disrupts your core belief about the nature of life. It disrupted your core belief about the nature of life. And it's an experience that shocks your system because it wasn't expected, right? And this is different than an experience that is dramatic, painful, or important. Okay, so pause, tune inward, and just, see what you're noticing for yourself as you're taking this in so far. Okay, let's resume. Now let's talk about these specific these specific boulders along this shore here. And we call this shore chaos. Chaos. This is going to be the shore of chaos. And chaos is one of the two primary signs of a lack of integration or an impairment in integration or a blockage of integration. So any term you like there fits, it works. And to give you an idea, chaos, it sounds and looks like anger, rage, which would be a more intense form of anger, right? It can sound or look like impatience, explosiveness, restlessness, impulsivity, tantrum. In kids, when you're seeing tantrums, that's a sign of chaos. They're experiencing chaos. Chaos can feel like racing thoughts, feeling distressed, anxiety, really big feelings, right? You just want to do something, right? I want to do something. Chaos is happens when we're being flooded or overwhelmed with feelings, bodily sensations, thoughts, or memories. Um, Ultimately, when you're experiencing chaos, life feels unpredictable, random, out of control. And just keep in mind, this is not an exhaustive list of examples of how we can experience chaos. And for you, when we start working together, we can get into, specifically how chaos is perhaps showing up in your life. Now, the bigger the rock or the boulder, and notice there's some different sizes here. The bigger the rock or the boulder, the more the water needs to maneuver around it, right? The more it's got to maneuver around it. And the more it splashes against it, right? Um, Making the water turbulent, it makes the water messy, and it creates more of a current, like white water. Okay, so clinically, this could look like something like an anxiety disorder, rage, reckless behavior. It can look like a panic disorder. It can look like a conduct disorder. It could look like mania. Um, paranoia. It could look like hypervigilance, right? To give you an idea of the more intense, we use intense, more intense versions of chaos. And so these, of course, are things that are more frequent, they're more pervasive, they last longer, they're more intense, right? So it starts to feel more like this is who I am, which we would call a trait, if you remember the first video, versus something you're experiencing for a certain amount of time, which would be a state of mind. So therefore, it's important to point out that chaos, like integration, is a state of mind that is fluid and it's impermanent, right? It doesn't last forever, in other words. And it can be affected and influenced by internal as well as external stimuli as well, right? And just like integration, chaos is a part of the human experience. This is something to eradicate altogether. I'm going to say it again. Chaos is a part of our experience as human beings. Okay. And here's what I mean. Let's take, I mean, really whatever it is you're struggling with right now in your life. Whatever it is you're looking to get rid of. Maybe it's anxiety, maybe it's depression, maybe it's conflict in a relationship, maybe it's anger, maybe it's sadness. But ultimately it's a physiological sensation or a thought or emotion, right? So to reframe it, it's a form of information. Those signals that you're getting, it's a form of information. And what this means is you can learn from it. If it's information, it's something you can learn from. And if I may be so bold, that may be trying to help you. Now, I know that is a novel and daring statement, but we'll come back to how that may be true, once we get into our work together. So pause, because I don't want this just to be information. I do want this to help uh, form something in you. And just notice what's showing up for you as you're hearing what I'm saying right now. Okay, let's move on. Move forward. So let's look at this opposite shore here. And notice that some of these boulders, really I'm drawing it so that they are so close together that they are restricting the flow of the water, right? Because there's not enough space for the water to go through, right? So this shore here, we are going to call the shore of rigidity, the shore of rigidity. Now, rigidity sounds and looks and feels like strong expectations, black and white thinking. There is a difficulty identifying emotions and bodily sensations. Rigidity can look and feel and sound like sadness, depression, a lack or a total loss of energy. Wilting, like a physical wilting, like if you picture a flower that's wilting, um, it can be represented by a body shutdown. Your body just feels like it's shutting down. Also, personally and relationally disengaged, disconnected, can look like holding on to hurts, unforgiveness. They can look like the silent treatment or stonewalling in relationships. It can feel like being paralyzed by fear. Um, ultimately, rigidity looks like, really being unable to adjust to life as it's happening. And you may also be unable to express or tolerate uniqueness and individuality than others. You don't like things to be different. You don't like differences or like things to be different so much if you're experiencing rigidity. And again, that's not an exhaustive list either, right? So we can get into specifics with you when we start working together. And of course, the bigger the boulder, right? The bigger this boulder, right? The more it is restricting the flow of the water, and the slower the flow of the water, And so it can just kind of sit and pool and become stagnant, right? And so clinically, this can look like something like a major depressive disorder. And so again, just pause, and check in with yourself. You can just kind of direct your attention inward, if you will, so much. And just see how this is feeling for you. Okay, let's resume. And we're getting towards the end here for this segment. And of course, so we've talked about the shore of chaos. I'm going to change my color here. Um, Here we go. We've talked about the shore of chaos. We have talked about now the shore of rigidity. And I hope you're getting a sense and feeling how these are different and look and sound and feel different, personally and relationally. However, there can be both chaos and rigidity, right? You can um, experience both states of mind. And so relationally, an example of impaired integration where there's both chaos and rigidity is when someone is acting rigid about something, and then when it doesn't go their way, they respond with chaos, right? So, for example, they blow up in anger, right? Something didn't work out the way they hoped, they blow up in anger, right? Or someone's acting chaotically about something, and when it doesn't go their way, they respond with rigidity. For example, this could be a child throwing a tantrum, which is an example of chaos in our language. And then when the parent doesn't give in, the child refuses to eat, they refuse to be consoled, so forth and so on, which would be rigidity, right? Things are shutting down. Another example of chaos and rigidity is a couple gets in a fight, which is what? It is chaos, and then they don't talk to each other for hours, days, longer, believe that or not. And that would be an example of what? Not talking to each other, right? That would be an example of rigidity, right? Clinically, when there is chaos and rigidity, that can look like a bipolar disorder, right? The high highs, the mania, and then the lows with the depressive piece. It can look like associative disorder, where you're just checked out of life at certain points. Things you're just tuned out, right? It can look like PTSD. Right? So just notice what's coming to mind for you as you're taking this in. Um, and just to check in, from what you're hearing me say so far, can you see how this is perhaps impacting you, where you are perhaps connecting with some of this information? Okay. So this is a horrible drawing. As I'm looking at it, I think a child drew this, quite honestly. But I'm hoping you're getting a really nice picture in an internal sense of integration, and how integration is really impacted by these states of either chaos, rigidity, or both chaos and rigidity, and what it is looking like in your life and in your relationships. So we're going to pause here. I'm going to come back with the third and I promise final video of the series of how I work. And we're going to wrap all this up and talk about what this means for you moving forward. So thanks again for your time. I look forward to seeing you in the next video.